Hello, everybody, and welcome to the D-Pad Podcast. Today we will be talking about Demise Vs Ganondorf and gaming today and what they did when they removed David Hayter as the voice of Solid Snake in Metal Gear Solid. We are your hosts. I am Serene Inc.
And I'm Tiger Skunk.
I'm John Sword 16.
Since this is our first podcast here, let's start out by giving a little introduction of ourselves so that people know who we are, what our gaming backgrounds and such are. I am, as I said, Serene Inc. For my gaming background, basically, I started out with the Commodore 64. Nobody probably knows what the hey that is.
Nope.
That was my first gaming console, or whatever you want to call it. Used to play things like Zack McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders and Below the Roots and things like that. And my first actual console was the Super Nintendo, when my sister's boyfriend at the time brought over his Super Nintendo. I played things like Super Mario World, Super Mario Kart, and other similar games like that. I'd had yet to really get into some of the better games like Zelda. After we had had the Super Nintendo for a while, my mom bought a Sega Genesis, and I got to play things like Sonic the Hedgehog 1 and 2 and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, and even got to play the Sega Genesis version of Disney's Aladdin game. That was a lot of fun. Then I moved on in like 97 and got the Nintendo 64, where I got to own my first actual video game, Star Fox 64. And I played the crap out of that. And from there, we just kind of moved on to owning the Wii many years later. It wasn't until sometime in like 2000 when I started getting into the Zelda series by emulator. Ocarina of Time was my first, but due to a glitch in the emulator, I never actually got to play the game. I started out in Kakariko Forest and ended up going straight to the Ganondorf chasing Zelda scene, pulling the Master Sword, and then fighting Ganondorf in that exact order, like no dungeons or anything in between. So that was quite interesting. I got into the Zelda series then, and I've been playing the Zelda series since. And for the most part, I've been enjoying the Zelda series, and I have, as of this point, played every Zelda game out there. And that is pretty much my history in gaming, mostly Nintendo stuff. Tiger!
Well, as I said before, my name is Tiger Skunk. At least I go by Tiger Skunk. And I was exposed to a lot of different types of gaming consoles through the years. My first one was a Sega Genesis. All my friends had Super Nintendos, so I could play Mario over their friend's house, and I'd go home and play Sonic. Then I moved on to the 3D era, and I had a Nintendo 64. My brother got a PlayStation. The only games we had for those were the I had Super Mario 64, and my brother had that demo disc that had all the demos of PlayStation games, including Blasto and like the first level of Tomba and like Gran Turismo and stuff. We were amazed at Gran Turismo, quite amazed. So throughout my middle school and college or high school years, though, is when I got exposed to the bulk of my favorite games. I did play games when I was younger, but the fact that, our family didn't really have that much money, so we couldn't go out and buy games whenever, all willy-nilly. I ended, I got a Super Nintendo really late in its life cycle in 95, and the only game that I had for it was Earthbound. So, which I unfortunately lost in storage. Yep. But anyway, we played that. My favorite franchises are Metal Gear Solid, Mother, and Zelda, mainly because I'm pretty much like one of those hipster games or artsy types, and I am not afraid to admit that. I wouldn't really consider myself a fanboy of any particular console or game development company or anything, because I see the good in all consoles, and while I do sometimes regret buying an Xbox 360, I do enjoy the games that I bought for it. One of my favorite games of all time on that console is Skyrim, and another one is Dark Souls, so I do have, I do branch out from, Sega and Nintendo and stuff like that, and I know a lot of people who stand their ground in Nintendo or stand their ground in Capcom and won't play other types of games to save their lives. So I try to experience, other types of games. I don't clown on the Call of Duty series because, let's face it, the multiplayer is super fun. But as for story wise, I don't know anything about it. I honestly don't really care. It doesn't really seem like the type of game that would have a strong single player campaign. At least the people that I know who have played it, they don't really say it does. So, mainly RPGs for me, but I get down on Mario or Kirby or whatever. I'm just an all-around type of guy. Consoles that I have so far: Nintendo Wii, Xbox 360. I plan to get a PlayStation 3. My friend has one. I play it over at his house all the time because even though I've never actually played Metal Gear Solid 4, it's one of my favorite games ever. So for him to be able to allow me to play it is, kind of a really good thing. But anyway, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. I play all kinds of games, and I try to branch out and make sure that I enjoy everything to the fullest. Anyway, John Sword, why don't you go ahead and take the floor for a while?
Oh, I could take the floor, but it would never come back. Anyway, I'm John Sword 16, and let's see, gaming history. It sort of started with the Super Nintendo, I would say, as the game. I would not know, because I don't remember that far back, sadly. But it was a good game, and got me interested in games. Sorry, bad grammar. On top of that, it just a few years later, went into, what was it, 5 years old, and it got an N64. First game for that was Banjo-Kazooie. Always a classic. Good platformer. You should try it. And time passes. The Mario, Zelda, all types of games itself. All kinds of systems, new generations and old, ending with the Wii, because that's all I have at the moment. And favorite types of games, what? RPG, fighter, anything that's interesting. I really don't have any bad preferences. Wow, that was a lot shorter than I thought it would be.
Alrighty. Well, if that's it for our introductions, then let's move on to the topic at hand. Our topic for today in this podcast is Demise Vs Ganondorf.
That's right. if we were to pit two of the most evil characters in the Nintendo history up against each other, who would come out on top?
Only one way to find out. Comparing time.
Yep. Now, the way we're going to compare this is we can't really compare one with the other fairly. In order to truly compare these, we have to factor each of the different forms. As such, we will be factoring Demise against the Ocarina of Time Ganondorf, Demise against the Twilight Princess Ganondorf, and Demise against the Wind Waker Ganondorf. Something
And
else?
possibly Four Swords Adventures as well.
This is true.
Oh, yeah,
If we get to that.
This is very true. Something that we do have to factor with this whole thing is that with all of them only being defeatable by using sacred weapons, of course that means that none of them could possibly win. So we will be not factoring that in, since there is some level in which somebody can win or lose. On top of that, due to Ganon being essentially the reincarnation of Demise himself, we won't be factoring in Ganon's power, just Ganondorf's power. So, when Ocarina of Time Ganondorf becomes Ganon, we won't be factoring that. We won't be factoring Beast Ganon. We won't be looking at, the Link to the Past, or the original Zelda, or any of those. Again, mostly because he draws from Demise's power, and that doesn't really work to factor in Demise versus Demise, essentially.
Although we could do that later on if you viewers really want it.
That is true. I suppose if people want it, If you want it, leave a comment and we will look into the idea of Demise versus Demise, essentially. Yes, let's go ahead and get started here. Before we can factor any battles, we have to first take a look at the characters themselves. Since there's only one Demise, let's take a look at his abilities, powers, personality, and so on like that.
Alright, so let's look at Demise. He's a big guy, standing at a good 6-7 feet tall. He carries a really large black sword. I guess you would know something about that, right, John Sword? And he, as far as we've seen in Skyward Sword, he doesn't really have much magic that involves offensive abilities. So, as far as his abilities go, he is quite skilled in swordplay, and he's very, very, very quick.
I think I have some things to add onto this, maybe for classification reasons. The sword he uses is almost an identical, yet evil version to the Master Sword that Link uses, if you look carefully at it. On top of that, he does apparently have the ability to create voids or areas, because he tells Link, if you want to fight me, I'll prepare a little area for us to fight. He must have power over that. That, and when you actually do fight him, as Tiger said, he's extremely skilled in swordplay. He's not going to say, oh man, you hit me. No, he's not going to let you hit you. That, and apparently he has some control over lightning, or some variation of a lightning skyward strike. Other than that, I really don't see any strong magical capabilities.
Now there's an interesting thought about his creating a dimension or realm, if you want. It's interesting to note that the realm that you fight him in is placed in the same spot he was imprisoned in. It's a curious thought if he has any control over his prison. Maybe that was his prison. and he thought he would draw Link into his prison, where he had been imprisoned for so many years to this point, and kill him there. And if maybe, that realm was in fact not only his prison, but, if he had control over it, then that would make sense. I think I just repeated myself 3 times.
Yeah. If we all are comparing Demise, he does have another form before we actually see the actual Demise. And that is
the imprisoned.
Which apparently is a trapped form of Demise. With maybe not as powerful as Demise, but you're not going to take him down except for one flaw on him. That sealing stone of what? Apparently it's marked with the goddess's symbols.
Yes, I believe the sealing spike, as it's referred to as, was created by the goddess Hylia and placed there when she sealed him away.
Frankly, I always thought the imprisoned looked more goofy than scary, but to each his own.
Well, when you get a game over when it gets all the way to the top, it's scary. Apparently it just doesn't want to kill you so soon.
I suppose.
Yeah. Demise, though, isn't really shown using much of the imprisoned's power. In fact, it seems as if the imprisoned and Demise each have their own abilities. But then, with the fact that the battles with the imprisoned occurred a few thousand years later, I'm wondering if he had just gained power and whatnot over that course of time, and that's why the imprisoned had different abilities that Demise himself did not have.
Or another possibility is that he'd just been holding back this entire time and just decided to go no holds barred for the last time, since honestly, if I were in his shoes, I would not want to go back into that hole again.
This is also true. After having been defeated twice before by the same dude, I can imagine he's like, you know what, screw this. I'm getting tired of this. Let's just kill these guys.
Well, yes, but this is where the complication gets on. If he had all that power... Oh, okay, then never mind. Let's do the typical evil villain thing. Oh, man. He doesn't look all that strong. I don't have to go that strong. Ow, he kicked my butt. God, he sealed me again. Okay, next time I'm gonna grow what? Arms? This time I'll grab him. No, he still got me. Okay, this time I'll fly. See how well that works.
Who knows exactly what was running through Demise's mind in that time. It could even be possible that Demise really didn't have a mind at that point, having been sealed for several thousand years and having been trapped in that form. It's entirely possible that he didn't even have a mind to begin with. But I suppose that's a story for another time.
One more thing to note is that if he does have the control over lightning, he seems to be weak to it. If you were to use it against him, he will be stunned for quite a while, allowing you to run in and use your attack.
A good point. That is, after all, how you pretty much defeat him in the game. So
He seems to have really quick reflexes to it, though, to be able to dodge lightning at times, though. AKA Fatal Strike enhanced with lightning.
right. He definitely seems to have some level of endurance because, like with Twilight Princess Ganondorf, when you get the ending blow, you stab him in the chest. But with Demise, you get the ending blow, and before you can do it, he moves out of the way. He does seem to weaken over time. Each time that you get the ending blow, he's down for a further length of time. But he seems to be able to get up fairly quickly and pretty much endure just any attack sent at him.
He shows no signs of slowing down. He's always ready to take you down until you take him down. So in order to actually beat him, you're going to need to hit him with so much force that it's going to wind him. It's going to down him immediately.
Pretty much.
That, and you also have to include the fact you are wielding a sacred blade that is the blade of evil's bane. Demise is probably the definition of evil in this case, so
Right. So, I think I think that's about it for Demise. Let's go ahead and pair him up against Ocarina of Time Ganondorf first of all. Once again, we will not be going into his Ganon form that he has when the tower falls on him. We will just be factoring Ganondorf, the Great King of Evil. Some thoughts on Ganondorf that I've noticed. The abilities that he has are the energy ball that he sends at you, and he kind of bounces it back, and you kind of bounce it back and forth using your weapon, unless of course you're using the bottle, but can also bounce it back and forth against him with a bottle. I'm not sure how a bottle works, but whatever. But he also has the attack where he sends like 5 balls of energy at you, and you have to spin attack in order to block the attack.
Or you can just fire an arrow while he's charging it up.
This is true. I don't think I've ever done that.
yeah, you can do that. I do that. Sometimes I make him do this thing so I can do the spin attack thing, but when he takes too long, I just go, you know what? You took too long to do this attack. I'm going to shoot with the arrow.
I find it's more cinematic if you wait for him to charge his attack, though.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
definitely. The third ability, Super Smash Brothers, refers to it as Warlock Punch. It's interesting because that is the ability he uses right away at the very beginning of the battle to force you out of standing in the middle platform, where he punches the ground, sends shockwaves out, and the ground just kind of breaks apart underneath you. In Super Smash Brothers, he seems to have that same ability, and it's almost like he throws the energy out there, like he collects it into his fist, but then when he hits, he then unleashes the energy forward. And of course, that's why the Warlock Punch does so much damage in Smash Brothers. On top of that, that's probably why it unleashes the shockwaves that cause the floor to collapse. So.
Yep, and also be warned for people that actually haven't played Ocarina of Time, shame on you, that if you do feel smart to like go near him again, he will spam this move as long as you're in the center platform.
Yes.
And when he does, the battlefield gets smaller.
Yep. He lowers the platforms down by I think 1 every space is random, so.
Yeah, it's I believe it's 1 square on all 4 sides each time he does it, but it's kind of in a random order, so eventually you'll have no battlefield left, in which case you'll just have the 4 corners, and that makes it super hard, because then you have to use the hover boots.
Hover boots or hookshot.
Or hookshot. You can use the hookshot as well.
Which apparently Ganondorf is either made out of metal or wood, because you could latch onto him with the hookshot, slap him a few times, and hookshot to the stained glass and get away.
Now, one thing that we will have to factor, due to the fact that we haven't seen Demise out, fighting outside of his realm, we'll probably have to factor these battles as occurring inside of that realm, simply because that seems to be where he has all of his power. So, what we're going to do here is take all of the abilities that we've discussed of both Demise and Ocarina of Time Ganondorf and kind of throw it together and see what we think would happen in the battle. First thing that comes to mind to me is Demise is very headstrong, he's very brute strength. He jumps right in there. You start the battle with Demise, and he only takes 3 seconds before he swings his sword at you. Just long enough for the, Demise title card and everything to show as he kind of steps up to you. Then after that, he just starts wailing on you, basically.
Well, here's a comparison for that. Sorry to interrupt you again. I have a bad habit of that. The difference between Ganondorf and Demise is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Demise is classified as a demon.
Yes.
Ganondorf is classified as a Gerudo, which means demon has more life force, more energy, more potential of being devastating.
True that.
Very
True
true.
that.
Gerudo is, I guess I'll classify as a human because they're like, besides Hylias, they're the Hylians. They're the most human-looking people and thing. That means they bleed. They're fairly easy to cut.
A good point.
So it's one thing they have on them right there.
Right. Well, with what I was saying, I was thinking more of the fact that Demise kind of runs in there, but with the battle with Ganondorf, once he Warlock punches the ground, he just kind of floats there and kind of laughs at you for a moment. And he thinks he's all big and bad, and he throws the ball of energy at you, and then he just, watches the ball of energy. Whereas Demise would wail on you, just, slamming his sword on you multiple times. Ganondorf just unleashes a ball of energy and goes, yeah, that's good enough. And then he just, stares and watches as the ball reflects. He's like, guess that wasn't. And he just, reflects it back, and you bounce it back and forth, and he just watches it, basically.
One explanation for that, though, could be the fact that he may be fairly new in handling this kind of power. So he's going to try different things to see if they work. The only thing that he really tries, though, is throwing them at you and hoping to God that he doesn't somehow hit them back at you. But the fact of the matter is, he's not really experienced with magic thus far. So he's going to be, quite noobish in the whole villainy thing.
Right. It is true that Demise has more time as he has more time as the villain, basically. To kind of learn what works and what doesn't. But it's still kind of an interesting thought, though, that he just kind of seems to think that throwing a ball of energy is good enough at you. But in a way, at the same time, though, it is stated that Ganondorf is very skilled in magic and uses magic very regularly. Now, as to what extent that means, they don't really show. They just show that, apparently he's very skilled in magic.
Well, as far as magic goes, yeah, but I'm talking about this kind of power. Like, he has the Triforce of Power, and he hasn't had it for... Well, he's had it for 7 years, but, I mean, he's never, before, the events of Ocarina of Time, he's been, looking for this opportunity to, or he's been looking to acquire it. So, the fact of the matter is, he hasn't really, I guess he hasn't used his time to really manifest his powers in a way that will really mess Link up. Either that, or it's the power of the Triforce of Courage that's kind of disrupting it a little bit and not allowing him to use it to his full potential until he's in his absolute dire straits, when he kind of uses that in order to channel Demise's power to become Ganon.
Right.
But all in all,
My
though,
theory-
it just seems like this Ganondorf is quite inexperienced and, quite cocky as well, since, he's got the Triforce of Power, he's got the 2 other Triforce holders in his, castle, in his room, and this is the final hour, so he's going to have a little bit of fun facing his only worthy foe, in order to try get that last hurrah before just finishing him off, and then finishing off Zelda, and then getting his Triforce all to himself.
See, I have theories about this myself. If you're calling this Ganondorf noobish in magic, but let's look at what he done over 7 years after getting this power. A, he destroyed Hyrule Castle and built another floating magic castle wherever it was, and apparently hit the ground so hard there's magma under it. That's one thing. 2, he revived and unleashed, well, actually one thing Link actually unleashed himself. That would be Bongo Bongo. He didn't know. It wasn't his fault.
Right.
But he revived Volvagia, or whatever it's called. He summoned, what was it? Morphia, whatever it is. Morpha. And drained the lake. And apparently the lake has something magical to it, too. He froze the Zoras all over the place. They're Zorsicles. Spirit Temple, not so much. It was more of the Katake and the other witch name.
Katake and Kome.
Kome.
Yeah. Twin Rova. There you go. It was more they're doing in that area. But most of it he did himself. He revived demons. He summoned demons all over the place. I mean, you go in Kakario Village going, man, haven't been here in 7 years. Thing. You first walk in, there's a giant plant going, hello. When you think noobish, he did separate himself from his phantom, so he put it in the first temple going, okay, if I'll kill him now, while not even being there, but still being there at the same time, with the same tactics I'm going to use on the final boss stage.
Right.
Him. But apparently he didn't learn from this, or something like that. It's either that or the Phantom, which had the memories, he already went, you know what, you're useless, go away.
Right.
Which he did, so he has the power to banish things as well. But apparently he couldn't banish Link or anything.
Well, in his defense, the energy balls do fly faster in the last battle with him.
Right.
So he learned that, but apparently didn't learn that sword, energy ball, reflect.
Right.
I suppose not. No, he didn't.
But I also have a theory about this. Due to the fact that it's light, and the Master Sword is light, I'm classifying it as light, because it doesn't look like it's a dark energy ball. The big, I'm going to throw 5 of them at you, looks more dark than the one he throws at you normally. Light will reflect light.
Yeah, but he's using dark power. It looks light because it's white, but I think that's just to make it easier for you to see, so you can hit it.
Normally,
I'm
I think
pretty
darker
sure
things.
I know, but I'm pretty sure he's still using dark power, unless he's using the Triforce of Power in order to actually channel it. But I doubt that, because he fires kind of a light ball at Link when you first encounter him as a kid, before you get the Ocarina of Time. And he doesn't have the Triforce of Power then.
Alright, then we'll go with my second theory. Since the Master Sword is the Sword of Evil's Bane, evil energy gets reflected also.
Right.
Yep.
I personally, when I first got into Zelda, I had never heard that it was the sword that destroyed evil. I don't know where it was that I heard it, but I had heard that the Master Sword was the sword that reflected evil. So I've just kind of always assumed that by definition of reflect evil, it means that anything of evil energy that it touches is reflected back. As such, I would imagine that if the energy ball was dark energy and it was shot forward, the Master Sword could in fact reflect that back, because it is the sword that reflects evil.
Yeah, but it's called the Sword of Evil's Bane, and if you look at the definition of Bane, it's killer, slayer, death, destruction. So, literally, the Master Sword is the Sword of Evil's death, or Sword of Evil's destruction.
Right.
You make it look like that. That's one thing you don't want to run into on a dark day.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So,
But anyway, that's the wrong people we want to talk about.
in either case, so Ganondorf just seems kind of cocky, basically, thinking he's all that, while Demise is also cocky, but while he's cocky, he's very headstrong and
He has
rushes
to
right
back
in
it up.
there. Honestly, in a fight between Ganondorf and Demise, I think the way it would play out would be Ganondorf would be standing there, he'd start floating, and Demise would kind of stare at him for a moment, Ganondorf would unleash enough ball of energy to which Demise would just swing back with his sword. And, of course, that's a huge freaking sword. So he's going to swing the sword and hit the energy ball, and that thing's going to go flying back at Ganondorf faster than he can even comprehend. If you're going to smack right into him, he's going to be out. And then Demise is just going to charge forward and slice him in half, basically.
I agree with that because A, Demise is a heck load stronger than Link. Even if you put it on the Golden Gauntlets, which is what? More pressure based than actual increases your strength based.
Right.
So he can hit that thing back so much harder than Link can. Then again, Link was just trying to hit it back to, stagger the guy. Demise is there trying to kill the guy, so.
Right.
One of Demise's attacks is if you have your shield up and he punches your shield, it'll reel you back, allowing for him to strike you.
Which means Demise has staggers.
Yes. Demise.
The thing is, Demise is just so brutally powerful that he can render anything his sword touches in half. So, look at Ganondorf here, Ocarina of Time. Although he is quite imposing, he's not quite as muscular as Demise in any way, shape, or form.
Nowhere near as muscular, definitely not.
Demise, by far, is more durable looking. Far stronger looking. That and he counters everything Ganondorf has in that state. Ganondorf mostly throws range. He blocks range with his melee and gets sliced in half by melee. It's basically if you took Link out and put Demise in, Demise would kill Ganondorf faster than Link could.
Pretty much. Needless to say, I don't think Ganondorf, or specifically the Ocarina of Time Ganondorf, would survive in a battle against Demise.
Nope. Don't think he will.
I rate that one a Demise wins that one against the Ocarina of Time one.
So we've got
Mundo.
Yeah, we've got Demise 1, Ganondorf 0 at this point. I guess the next one that we would want to look at would be Twilight Princess. Let's take a gander here at what Ganondorf's powers are.
Now, this Ganondorf has been sealed to death, or rather executed by the Sages of Light. Were they?
They were just the 6 sages.
Or just the 6 sages? Okay. Well, all right. So let's give a little backstory here. Ganondorf occurs in the, I want to say, adult timeline, in which, or is it the child timeline? It's probably the child timeline, isn't it? Yeah, it's the child timeline.
Twilight Princess is a child timeline.
Okay, it's the child timeline in which Link goes back and goes straight to Zelda, lets her know all about Ganondorf's plan, and he is executed and sentenced to death. Now, apparently, this takes a toll on his psyche, in which he becomes extremely bloodthirsty. Before it appears that Ganondorf, according to Wind Waker Ganondorf, anyway, but it appeared that he had some kind of motive, in which to acquire the Triforce, of course, besides, covering the entire world in darkness. But here, it seems that he's going to take a more hands-off approach to that. He's going to manipulate a tribe, use their magic in order to fulfill his goal, and merge their world into Hyrule's. Now, as far as his abilities go, it doesn't really seem like he uses much magic. Probably because he was never able to acquire the Triforce of Power by his own right. So he's not very magically inclined as far as, floating and firing, magical balls and whatnot. But his swordplay seems to have improved quite a bit. Not that he really used a sword beforehand, but we won't get into that. Um, the fact of the matter is, he's very, very durable, and he's very agile, meaning that he's able to jump at least 6, 7, 8 feet into the air, land behind you, and land a hit on you from behind. That takes some skill. Not to mention, if you try to fight him via conventional means without using any sword techniques that you learn throughout the game, he'll block them. He won't be perturbed by any of them. Um, the thing that sucks about him, though, is that if we're going to compare him to Demise, Demise is a go-getter. Like, he will run at you, he will attack you until you're dead or he's dead, and he won't stay down for long. The thing about Ganondorf is that if once you knock him down, that's your chance to strike. However, if you don't strike, he will get back up, and you will have to knock him down again. But once you do, the ball's in your court. It's all up to you to strike the final blow, and when he goes down, he stays down. So, knowing that, what do you guys think? How is it looking for him as far as that goes?
Let's see. Let's bring in a little more about him. When you actually do meet him the first time, I think it's actually the first and the last time. And then actually, we need to go a little before that. Because I actually don't understand this either, so you actually help me here, guys. The sages have a hold of him. He's literally chained up, about to die. They take a sacred sword, which I guess is a sacred sword. It's a sage's sword. I'll call it the sage's sword right there.
I think that is actually its official name, is the Sage's Sword.
The sage's sword pick it up and stab it right through him. All of a sudden, Triforce of Power is on his hand. Or something. Which means there's like some cruel... Well, actually, we'll do it like this. Since Demise is already cursed, Link and Zelda and all their descendants, what was it, the blood of the hero and the spirit of the goddess?
Yeah, I believe so.
With the curse, it made the Triforce apparently awaken on this Ganondorf.
Spoiler alert, by the way.
Oh, spoiler alert. Sorry. If you're sitting here watching this podcast, I'm sorry. I spoiled it. Come out where I live. I'll buy you ice cream or whatever. But, at this state, he was pierced with a sword and is apparently immortal at this point. Now, let's move on a little more. Tiger already covered the not actually blackmailing, sort of borrowing this tribes, the Twillies, magic and power. Then, magic power dies. The guy tells, oh, it's this guy that's doing it. You go and see him. He sits there all calm, waiting for you. What are you gonna do? Going to the case of abilities, he, like Tiger said, swordplay picked up a hell of a lot, because he actually picked up a sword.
Right.
It's a sacred sword at that, which means it's on par with the Master Sword. Which means it's not like the Master Sword can break this sword, because A, it's a Sage's sword, which sort of outranks the Master Sword in this case, but it can't break each other. And it looks like he picked up some techniques of the Twillies, because he can teleport at will. And not just teleport, he can possess people. What he does with Zelda. Which means, though this doesn't really affect Demise, because what does he have to hold on to? But he can possess people and make you fight against people you don't want to fight. But then again, like, how does it affect Demise? What are you going to do? Possess his sword?
Right.
But he can do that. He also has transformations, but we're not getting really into the transformation because I guess I classify it as Ganon.
Yeah, the pig form that he takes in Twilight Princess there is Beast Ganon, which draws on the power of Demise. So we're not factoring that.
However, it should be noted, though, that he apparently has the ability to transform into Ganon on demand instead of in his most dire state.
This is also true.
Also, he has the power to conjure up portals as Beast Ganon. Whether he uses these portals as Ganondorf, though, is really unknown since he doesn't really do that. But you have to see like what you're dealing with here, though. Like, he's considerably a lot more powerful than he was in Ocarina of Time. I would guess it's because he's been trapped in the Twilight for so long, and he's also quite pissed off. It could also be because he's using the power of the Twilight, and that along with his own abilities kind of made him what he was in Twilight Princess.
Continuing on my little thing, he also has horseback abilities, which apparently Demise does not know. That, or I don't think there was really horses back then. They were just big birds that don't want to come down to the ground. That, and at least I've had this happen to me when I fought him. He could summon spectral people at will to try to fake you out, knock you off, deal damage. Only when he's on the horse. It's not known if he does this otherwise, unless you want to count Phantom Ganon.
He does have the ability to summon 5 spectral versions. Now, an interesting fact about these is if you factor in Phantom Ganon can take a few hits. But these spectral forms, they only take like a single hit and then they're gone. It could be that he's learned to split up the phantom power, but of course that makes each one weaker. But at the same time, even if it's weaker, if you've got 6 against 1, that's completely different than 1-on-1.
Yeah, more damage output. Now,
Right.
going on to the last phase, apparently, which he does this in the final draw with him, he has the ability to make, I'll call them Twilight walls for the hell of it, because they look like they belong in the Twilight. But he can seal off places at will, so you're not running from him at all. That, and since it's L targeting or Z targeting in the game logic, in real life logic, you'd have to keep focus on him all the time. If you don't, he, like Tiger said, he leaps up in the air like gone. You don't see him anymore. At least in a good distance, then he comes down and lays a hit on you. That, and this part is, if you try to defend against him, he does have staggers like Demise. Might not be as strong, but he will land a hit on you.
One more thing we should probably make note of is disembodied, flaming, angry head Ganondorf.
Right.
Now, this Ganondorf seems to be absolutely powerful. He was able to take on the fused shadows alone and win.
That is true.
If he used that against Link, poor guy, the game would be over. But for some reason he didn't.
The fused shadows are actually shown to be super powerful. I believe Lenevu says that the power of the fused shadows rivaled the power of the Triforce. So, if you factor in the fact that he can rival the power of the Triforce, that's pretty dang powerful. He is extremely powerful in that flaming disembodied head form.
I think that would be it on that part, because Minda had to teleport the 2 other people, Zelda and Link, out of there because it was just, I bet she could feel the power coming off that thing, and using the fused shadows, she still lost.
Right. Now, we don't see the battle with the fused shadows, but we do see the result of the battle when Link and Zelda appear in Hyrule Field, they look off to the castle, and the castle just explodes. You know, there's obviously a massive release of serious power in that case.
But it all ends with one thing: Ganondorf on top, crushing a Fused Shadow.
Right.
It's if what Serene says is correct, it's basically crushing a piece of the Triforce right in front of everyone. That was useless.
Right. He is definitely extremely powerful in that form. I think in order to properly factor in Demise versus Twilight Princess Ganondorf, we're going to have to look at essentially both of Ganondorf's forms for this. We're going to have to set up a battle of what would happen if it was Ganondorf from Twilight Princess at his full power versus Demise. And then the second one, if as kind of a setting, let's say,
or handicap rather,
something like setting. The setting for the second battle would be he has just defeated Link. The whole 4 battles have gone on. He just knocked down Link. You know, Link's dead now. You know, he just kills Link. And just after he kills Link, here comes Demise striding up to him. So let's take that, and we've got 2 separate Twilight Princess Ganondorfs here. We'll refer to one as God Ganon, because that's what they basically refer to him as, is God Ganondorf. And then we'll just refer to the other one as Twilight Princess Ganondorf. So, in the battle between Demise and God Ganondorf, how do we think that battle would play out? Who do we think would win in this aspect?
Well, considering the fact that that God Ganon has the power of the Twilight, or the Twilight, that's such an awkward word, Twilly, however you say it, those guys.
Call them the Shadow Clan. That's their Japanese name.
Alright, fine. We'll call them the Shadow Clan. Since Ganondorf has the power of the Shadow Clan on his side, backed up by his own magical prowess that we got a glimpse of back in Ocarina of Time, he's a pretty powerful guy. Pretty damn powerful. If he uses Disembodied Head Ganon, then, you know, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the entire battle right there. However, are we going to factor in the imprisoned on this too?
We haven't been.
I mean, yeah, we haven't been, but then that would be like Ganon and the imprisoned. So let's just keep it at that. So, now Demise is very strong, very physically strong, but like I said earlier, we don't really know what his magical prowess is. So going by what we've seen, we're going to assume that he really doesn't have much magical prowess, considering that we don't have the ability to use magic in that game in Skyward Sword.
Right.
But so as far as, you know, Ganondorf's powerful magic that he uses in this game, we're going to assume that Demise is totally vulnerable to it, and that he will be completely floored by it. He probably wouldn't be able to lay a finger on Ganondorf, on God Ganon.
Right.
Simply because he's a huge embodied head and was able to take down the power that's power that's equal to the Triforce. So honestly, I think that Ganondorf will get this one.
I think so too. I really don't have an argument for that, except for I don't. I mean, you have teleportation for the Ganon thing, and Demise is mostly melee and the other thing, unless he does his lightning skyward strike things.
Right.
Yeah.
But on top of that, he really doesn't have much on Ganondorf in this state. The Ganondorf is obviously more powerful, unless Demise, being the curse bearer, being able to, you're cursed, and pretty much Ganondorf is Demise's descendant in some logic. It's the form of Demise that keeps haunting Link and Zelda. And since Link would be dead and stuff like that, Demise can strip that off of him.
Right.
If we think like this, Demise is the one that kept Ganon alive to become God Ganon. The saying is, I brought you into this world, I could take you out. But if we take that just a straight fight without him knowing that, Ganondorf would literally mop the floor with him.
Definitely. I don't think that Demise has much chance against God Ganon. On the other hand, when it's factored with Twilight Princess Ganondorf, once again, the weakened state, he seems to have been weakened by the light arrows, so he really couldn't seem to use much in the way of magic in that final fight. Having fought the fused shadows and winning, but probably being weakened from that because he didn't go into his God Ganon form then either. Assuming that basically Ganondorf no longer has his magic power because of the fused shadow and the light arrow. It's at this point it's pretty much just melee against melee, sword against sword. And
now, let's let people know that you kind of said light arrow out of nowhere. We didn't really say anything about that. We should probably also make sure to mention the light arrows were used by Zelda on the horseback battle, and and we kind of go with the idea that the light arrow kind of weakened his magical ability considerably.
Right.
Light arrows are like the weaker range equivalent of the Master Sword hitting you. So
pretty
like
much,
that.
yeah, pretty much.
So yeah, factoring in, Ganondorf being in a weaker state at this point. At this point, it's all going to be sword versus sword. It's all melee, basically, aside from maybe Demise's lightning strike or, Ganondorf's ability to jump pretty dang high. I'd say, factoring their knockbacks, their swords, I really have to say that I'm personally a little unsure where this would go. They both are durable, though Demise seems more durable than Ganondorf. And factoring in just the durability, I think Demise would come out on top.
I think so too.
Demise has shown that he has a much more powerful drive for fighting. However, that doesn't mean that Ganondorf is going to go down so easily.
Right.
The battle is going to last for a long time. His swordplay, Ganondorf's swordplay, is very, very effective, but I think ultimately Demise's brute strength is going to take a toll on poor Ganondorf's stamina, and eventually Ganondorf will, collapse since he is still human.
It should be noted that striking Demise's sword, like if you swing and Demise counters your swing, it gives you a huge knockback. I mean, a bigger knockback than any other time that you strike an opponent's sword. Really, the only way to block Demise's attacks are with the shield. And when you factor the fact that Twilight Princess Ganondorf has no shield, all he has is a sword, I think that Demise's sword would overpower Ganondorf's sword, and that because of that, there would be another reason that he would win the fight.
Let's see. How would I do this? Okay, well, I have a few reasons. First off, Ganon's power to jump in air versus lightning from Demise isn't the smartest thing to do.
Not exactly, now.
Two,
Right.
if we factor in that even though the sword that Demise uses is a dark version of the Master Sword, I'm calling the dark version of the Master. I'm calling the corrupt Master Sword. I don't care what anyone says. it equally is, I guess you would say, it's equal power to the Master Sword, which is the weapon that actually kills Ganondorf in the end.
I suppose, but since it's a dark version, I don't think it's going to have the same function. Like, it's still not going to be the Sword of Evil's Bane. It might be the Sword of Good's Bane or something. I don't know.
True, but
Like,
if we think like...
since it does seem to do more damage to Link, than any other enemy in the game, it could have that function. But
Right.
in this
It
fight,
could, but
in this fight, it wouldn't really be much of use against Ganondorf since he's pretty much evil incarnate.
true. So, okay, I'll take that back. I withdraw that one. You win that one. But we also had the theory that Demise is holding literally a broadsword also, and the Sage's sword is, I guess I'll classify it as a slim sword. If we count the fact that the corrupted Master Sword is the Sword of Good's Bane, then what does the Sage's sword count as?
It would definitely count as if not necessarily a good blade, it would definitely be a light blade.
I would say it's neutral at best, since it's used to execute criminals.
But the blade itself is formed purely of light.
Which I guess would be the only reason why Ganondorf's able to hold it is because of the Triforce of Power, which is essentially all people say as a light artifact.
Right.
That, and if we factor in that the Triforce of Power at that state is keeping him alive, because he does have a hole in his chest, and it takes the Master Sword to stop it, or whatever, which factors in my thing that Demise can wound Ganondorf to the point where he's like cut up and everything, but Ganondorf's still fighting, then he just goes, snap, God power gone.
Right. Well, again, though, we're not really factoring the fact that they can only be beaten by, like, sacred weapons.
Well, that wasn't sacred, that was just a snap of the fingers.
Well, yeah.
But
But, I mean, like, in this case, Demise against Twilight Princess Ganondorf, we wouldn't be factoring the fact that only a sacred weapon stabbing him in the chest is going to be what actually kills him. Pretty much at this point, we're kind of factoring that any weapon stabbing him in the chest would work.
Well, then Demise would clearly win. His weapon is so much stronger. If we count the fact that the blade is neutral, it's not really meant for fighting. Like you said, it's meant for execution, which means it's supposed to go stab, done.
Right.
It's not really meant for fighting. Demise is meant for fighting, causing bloodshed, making blood spilled, walking on the blood of his enemies, sort of thing. Right. Ganondorf's little toothpicks does nothing to it.
Right. So, I think in factoring between Twilight Princess Ganondorf as the weaker power versus Demise, I think Demise would have it.
Ganondorf's a bloody corpse on the ground by then.
Yeah. What does Tiger think?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. So we have 2 for Demise and 1 for Ganondorf.
Yes.
Things thus far are not looking good for our great King of Evil, I tell you that.
Yep.
Well, you are dealing with a greater evil.
Right.
Just saying.
True that. However, let's step on over to Wind Waker Ganondorf. Serene, would you like to give us a little backstory on this guy?
I think Wind Waker Ganondorf is my favorite of the Ganondorfs. First off, Wind Waker Ganondorf is the most human, in a sense, in that Wind Waker Ganondorf is shown as being caring. Basically everything he did in Ocarina of Time, he did because he wanted to save his people from the desert, which was, in fact, killing them slowly, every day. He says, the sun came up and the wind brought death, and the moon came and then the wind brought death, Basically, no matter what, death came to the desert, at all times. and because of that, he wanted to save his people, so he tried to take over Hyrule, where the wind didn't bring death. Of course, in that aspect, after taking control of Hyrule, he completely destroyed it, but still, he still was trying to bring about something good, but he did it in the wrong way and, did it evilly. This Ganondorf is the same Ganondorf that was sealed in the Sacred Realm at the end of Ocarina of Time. He's sealed away, and then Link gets sent back in time, which shatters the Triforce of Courage. And then several hundreds of years later, they don't give a specific amount of time. I know Eiji Aonuma is supposedly quoted as saying 100 years, but if you look better at that line that he uses, the word there actually means centuries, not century. So it's actually several hundreds of years, plus it's actually stated in Wind Waker that it has been more than just 100 years. I like to think about 600 years or so.
Not to put an exact number on it, but it's been a long time. There
right. In either case, he's been trapped in the Sacred Realm. He's been living off the Triforce of Power. The Triforce of Power, just like it did in Twilight Princess, grants him immortality. He can't die as long as he has the Triforce of Power.
However, he has considerably aged, which probably gave him a little bit of reflection on his choices. It still didn't really change his... it didn't really change his methods of going about his goals, as far as the whole still being evil thing. But haven't you guys noticed that he does look a little older?
He does look a little bit older. It's interesting that, not only is he older, his face looks older and everything, but he's fatter, which is kind of an odd thing. I'm not sure how that works. I mean, if he, I don't know. I mean, is there food in the Sacred Realm? I mean, how much does he eat in a day?
Someone draw a fan art of Ganondorf munching chocolates while he's trapped in the Sacred Realm, looking at his watch going, is it time yet? No, it's not yet. Wind Waker hasn't been released.
I would imagine that as soon as he got back, he just went on an enormous feast. Started with Kapora, Gabora, captured him, plucked him, dropped him in some hot grease, and just had at him,
right.
Hyrule fried chicken or something.
Hyrule fried owl in this case.
Yeah.
No one would miss him.
Or would it be Gerudo
No
fried
one has.
Right.
Anyway, should we get into the...
Anyway, in either case, this Ganondorf is really interesting. In Twilight Princess, of course, he has the one blade, and he uses that. But in Wind Waker, he actually wields two blades. Some people have actually theorized that the two blades are two special swords that are unique to him. I once heard from a Zelda fan that basically it's the black sword and the white sword. The white sword, of course, being the white sword from the very first Legend of Zelda. These two being both dark blades that he wields that maybe he crafted himself in the Sacred Realm, which is kind of an interesting thought. I don't think it's true, but why not just throw it out there anyway? In either case, though, he wields these two blades that he seems to be able to summon and desummon at will. Because, a flick of his wrist and he has the two swords out. But then when he strikes Zelda down in the final battle, a flick of his wrist and the sword disappears. He strikes her down and then flick, the sword reappears. So he seems to have some kind of connection to the blades. If not a connection, he knows a way to teleport them in and out with just a flick of his wrist. Some kind of magical power. On the other hand, he's not really shown as having magical ability. He it seems like most of his magic goes to his defense due to his seemingly inability to take damage even when you're striking him with your sword. But it's interesting because this particular Ganondorf, this Wind Waker Ganondorf, you strike him with your sword, but he doesn't really seem to react much. And even later in the game, in the battle, he starts blocking your attacks more frequently, to the point where in the last section, right after Zelda wakes up from being struck down, you cannot hit him. There is nothing you can do to hit him without reflecting the light arrow back at him. Basically, he seems to learn, figure out, okay, what is he doing, When he does this, he's twirling around behind my back. So, of course, I can't turn that fast, so I'll just throw my swords behind my back and block that way, So he seems to learn as he's going along. He seems to gain more intelligence and figure things out better, which could be partially because he's not insane like the Twilight Princess Ganondorf, and actually has had centuries to recollect what he's been doing. He's had a chance to learn how to fight, and has had a chance to become wiser. Both Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time Ganondorf seem to suffer for the same problem in that neither one really has all that much wisdom. The Triforce splits into three because power is what represents him most. But he seems to lack courage because he's always hiding in his castle in Ocarina of Time. And he seems to lack wisdom because if he was smart enough to figure out what to do, his plans wouldn't fail every time. So he seems to lack wisdom and courage in those aspects in Ocarina of Time. And since he's absolutely insane, he doesn't seem to have any in Twilight Princess either. He just goes out and kills. So he seems to lack both wisdom and courage in both of those games. He still seems to lack courage in this game, but he seems to have more wisdom than he had before.
Much more.
Due to the fact that, he does run away from you until you confront him at the very top of the tower. On the other hand, an interesting thing about this Ganondorf is he is very agile, he's very fast. You don't even get to fight him initially. Once you climb up to the top of the tower and you get there, he does a little monologue, and then, he says, the Triforce of Power is mine, and then the Triforce of Wisdom is mine. And then he turns to Link, and Link readies himself for a battle. And by the time he's ready to fight, Ganondorf is right in front of him, just charged all the way across the top of the tower. This is a big tower. He flies right across to the other side of the tower and smacks Link right in the chin with his fist. Sends the Master Sword flying, knocks Link to the ground, and Link is out at that point. I don't know if you want to factor that maybe he Warlock punched Link, which could make sense, or what.
I guess.
Whatever the case, even without a Warlock punch, he's hundreds of years older. He's probably a lot stronger than he was in Ocarina of Time. I'm kind of surprised, actually, that a punch straight to the chin like that against Link didn't shatter his jaw,
Yeah.
So...
But that's video game logic.
That is video game logic.
I don't know if you're done explaining. Should I start my rant?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'll start right there from where you left off. I don't think he was trying to kill Link at that time. Because, hero, we wanted actually a fight. But he did want to try for the courage.
Right.
Which he has to stun Link long enough to take.
Yeah, but it would have been much easier to take it if he just killed them there. But
yeah,
we're not gonna get into that.
Let's not
really
get into that
depth. That's like logic. That's a villain's folly right there.
Right.
Yep. Now, okay, my rant time. Looking back at this, Ganondorf did have time to reflect. He did get a lot wiser. a lot wiser. He knows literally everything. Like, I mean, the first time you confront him in Forsaken Fortress, he knows you can't touch it because you have a Master Sword that doesn't have it. I bet he would have said, "Come on, you get the first shot."
Right.
But fast forward there because we don't want to go through all the dungeons. I don't even think Ganondorf literally had anything to do with the dungeons except maybe the sages. I think he killed the sages.
Yeah, he did kill the sages, and he left Valhalla and Mulgara behind to basically guard the temples and prevent the sage lines from continuing.
Okay, so I'll go with the thing that he still had either control over monsters or the ability to summon monsters at that time. But he just doesn't really, if he could do it, he would have summoned them back, going, "Here, tag team." I mean, cowardness. You said it yourself. He's a coward.
Right.
Not factoring in Puppet Ganon because that technically counts as Ganon, so he was hiding behind a giant puppet. That was more annoying than he was. Actual fighting with him, he is so much faster, and I have to say his swords are actually Gerudo blades. Like, Ocarina of Time Gerudo blades, like the Gerudo person attacked you with, and if he hit you enough, you'd stun him.
Right.
I think those are actual Gerudo blades, his race's blades, not his holy blades, cause...
Yeah. But they don't look as curved as... Well, they're not curved like they are, like their Gerudo blades are, though.
Right.
Yeah, but maybe he has one special made for him, because he did hide them in his sleeve. If they were curved, I mean, his sleeve would be like... I'm just trying to show you physically, so... It would look like a Zora's fin was under there, sort of popped up, like you're about to throw the boomerang or whatever.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
So maybe he had specially made blades for him to hide in his sleeves to pull him out like that. They might not be sacred, but they do give him the excuse to be fast, have high counter ability, because let's face it, you gotta fight those Gerudo pirates or whatever so many times, you're thinking, going, "Man, that slash should have hit."
Right, definitely.
Also going in, he is so much faster in this thing, he does have the jumping capability. Hopefully, if we do the Demise and Wind Waker thing matchup, we don't use the field that he was in, because technically it was filled with water.
Yeah.
Right.
Water and lightning.
Yeah, so let's place him in a dry field that time. But he is a lot faster. He has high counter ability, even to a Sacred Blade. And if we're not counting Sacred Blade, he has high counter ability to just about anything. I mean...
Even fire at point-blank range.
Yep.
Even fire, even ice. You can't even hit him with a light arrow directly unless he's literally off guard. Or you literally catch him off guard, you're going, "Hey, shoot me." Apparently, he does have control over monster, because he had control over the Hemrock King. He said, "Throw him over the river." Overall, if power isn't the way he goes about things, even though he Falcon punched Link, but if he doesn't go with power, he does have a huge amount of speed over Demise.
Definitely.
Most definitely.
One interesting power that I don't think any of us have mentioned yet is when you're getting further into the fight, and when you get further into the fight, like especially near the end, if you don't talk to Zelda, she continues to try to shoot light arrows at him. It's interesting that Ganondorf jumps into the air, but then not only does he jump into the air, he pulls himself up and does this little like flip, kind of like spinning thing in the air, where he's like completely flat, and he's got his swords, out, and he's spinning. Then he comes and lands on the ground. So, using that, he could easily get over Demise, especially with that particular ability.
Yeah, but I'm still counting the fact that jumping over someone with lightning control at all, period, is not the best thing to do. Cause...
Well, actually, in this case, I could see that helping if you factor lightning rods. They always hit the highest thing. If you were to do the jump and he's holding his swords up, the lightning's going to come down on top of his blades. Now he's got 2 swords that are electrically charged. When you're fighting with the Master Sword and everything, you hit with the lightning. You know, you've got 1 sword, you hit him with the lightning, and then you slash at him a couple of times. Imagine if you had 2 swords, and, you know, you hit him with lightning and you're slashing away with that sword, and then he kind of starts to get up and everything, he's done being electrocuted. You've still got a second blade. As you're swinging that, you bring that first blade up, and then it's lightning charged as well. You just go back and forth, dealing damage constantly. He can't even get up in that case.
Yep, if we put that factor in, like I said, this Ganondorf's speed is amazing, and if we do factor in that his blades are not special, like the Sage's sword, because I don't even think that's considered made out of metal. I think it's just holy or magical. But if we consider the fact that his swords, the normal swords, are made out of metal, and hopefully that the handles are not conducted to anything, he can do that. And even if he didn't do that, he's so much faster than Demise and has 2 swords to back him up. Fighting someone with 2 offensive things compared to your 1 offensive thing, you may be able to knock 1 out of the thing, but he has another one. While you knock that one out, you just eventually Demise is going to tire out, whether he's a demon or not.
Not to mention, he's so much smarter than the other incarnations of Ganondorf in that he may see Demise raise his sword up into the air, capture the lightning. He might get hit by the lightning, he might not. You know, he might end up dodging it, but he'll see that Demise can use it, so he might figure out, if he can do that, maybe I can too. So, hence the whole lightning strike thing. You know, he sees that Demise gets, stunned by it, and, presto, changeo, boom, there goes Demise.
Right.
We are noting that if you are too close to Demise when he does this, he does let off an electrical shockwave. I think that's happened to me when I fought him.
I actually did not know that.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, if you are too close to him when he calls down the lightning, he does discharge electricity. It's not very far range, but it is around him, so Ganondorf could not be close to him when he does it.
Interesting. Yeah. I've never seen that before, so.
It's happened to me when he failed to knock me down.
Uh-huh.
It's interesting. Like, this is kind of on a tangent, but when I first fought Demise, I didn't think of the lightning rod thing at all. I just, tried to block his attacks as best I can. I dodged his lightning when he did that, and I just went in and tried to and parried him and slashed him down and whatnot. So I didn't even know that you can steal his thunder until I think the second time it was until you streamed it, Serene. Until I saw you do that, and I was like, "What? You do that?"
Yeah, that was my accident too. Like, I brought the sword up because I wasn't even thinking. I'm like, "I'll Skyward Strike," and I'm like, "My sword's not charging." Oh wait, that's right. I can't use Skyward Strike. And just before I brought the controller down, the lightning comes down on my sword and was like, "Wait a minute." So I'm like, "Wait, can I Skyward Strike with this?" Yes! Awesome! I'm like, okay, I've got this figured out. I had to put the shield away because it kept glitching and pulling out my shield instead of the sword, but whatever.
But, yes. If Ganondorf does not, Ganondorf is a lot wider, so he will figure it out, but as long as he's not close to him, he'll be able to electrically charge his blades, and like Serene said, hack and slash. Double stun time, I mean...
Definitely.
If you do it on Demise with just the Master Sword, it's about, 2, 3, 4 second stun of slashing?
Yeah, at least.
And if you account for that Ganondorf speed, he swings twice as fast as Link, twice as much.
Right.
And has a second stun ready, so it's 8 seconds times, let's say he swings 4 times in 1 second. That is... I'm not good at math. That is a lot of damage.
That is a lot of damage.
Yeah. So, I guess we can pretty much say that this Ganondorf has got Demise in the bag.
Definitely. This Ganondorf is smart. This Ganondorf knows what he's doing. I think this Ganondorf would wipe Demise out real easy.
As long as he remembers not to fight him in a wet place.
Yeah,
Pretty much, yeah.
pretty much.
Now, we've got a bit of a problem here, since we've got 2 for Ganondorf and 2 for Demise, so we're gonna have to break this tie here somehow.
Right.
What other Ganondorfs are there?
For a tiebreaker, I know we said we didn't want to factor in Ganon if possible, because that's Demise power. But in Four Sword Adventures, that Ganon really isn't him calling upon Demise's power. The Trident of Darkness is what turns him into Ganon. The Trident makes the wielder become the King of Evil. So, in that aspect, I think it would be safe to use that Ganon and say that, this Ganon is kind of not drawing on the power of Demise, but is instead drawing on the power of the Trident of Darkness. Just as Ganondorf from Ocarina of Time was using the Triforce of Power, just as Twilight Princess Ganondorf was using the power of the Twilly, just as Wind Waker Ganondorf was using the power of his 2 swords. I think it's safe to say this Ganon is using the power of the Trident of Darkness, not the power of Demise. In Four Sword Adventures, this Ganon is huge. The first thing that you have to factor is just how big this guy is. He's so big that 4 links can stand side to side and be as long as he is wide, this guy is absolutely huge. The Trident of Darkness that he has is just enormous, He has a lot of similar abilities to his A Link to the Past counterpart, such as he can throw the trident, and it'll swing out, hit people, and it'll come back. I think he can call forth fire with it, if I remember right. You can throw it and it'll spin with, fire, so you have to dodge that even more so. But in either case, the trident always comes back to him. On top of that, when you hit him enough times, he starts throwing you into the Dark World. A big bolt of lightning shoots out from the trident, hits you, and forces you into the Dark World. In the Dark World, he then summons minions, all kinds of Stalfos Knights, things like that you have to fight. Once you kill those, you're able to escape the Dark World, but then it goes right back to fighting Ganon again. He jumps around the field a lot. He'll throw the trident at you, and then he will fly to the other side of the field and grab the trident back. So he can fly around. He can stomp the ground, which doesn't really do anything per se, but if you're under his feet when he stomps the ground, it hurts really badly. Beyond those abilities, I can't immediately recall anything else that he could do. It was mostly just shadow stepping and sending you into the Dark World and throwing his trident and things like that. But even so, those are pretty powerful abilities. Factoring the size of Link, we're going to say this Link is about the same size as Wind Waker Link, which is about 4 foot tall, and the average Link is about 6 feet. So it would take about 2 Links standing on each other's shoulders in order to reach the height of Demise, as I imagine Demise being about 8 foot tall. Because of that, it takes about 4 of the Four Sword Adventure Links standing on each other's shoulders just to reach the neck of Ganon from Four Sword Adventures. I would say he is considerably taller than Demise. Factoring in the length of Demise's sword with the just abysmal size of the Trident of Darkness, that trident is considerably bigger than Demise's sword.
The thing about it, though, is that this is kind of an unfair advantage in that we don't really understand the full power of Demise. We don't know if he can turn large outside of being the imprisoned himself. But if we're going to go by his backstory, the little bit that we know about him is that he's killed lots of people in the past, and he's never really had much of a match before fighting Link. So we don't know how he would respond to having an opponent that's much more imposing than him and much more, threatening than he is. So
Right.
we're just gonna, like we said before, we're just gonna go with what we know about him so far that has appeared in Skyward Sword canon, and we're going to try to use that in order to make an assumption of how he would respond. And according to how he responds to Link, he's a go-getter type of guy who loves a challenge but is extremely cocky, so chances are he's going to go up against Four Swords Adventures Ganon with chip on his shoulder and just going to walk right up to him and say, "Alright, big guy, let's do this thing."
Alright, my rant time. Let's start with the fact that... Actually, let's back up a bit, because I do want to talk about Demise just for a second. If we know the backstory of... Apparently, he was so threatening that the goddess Hylia herself had to bring... I don't know what they were called before they went up there. Well, I'll call Hylians for then. Had to bring a piece of Hylia up into the sky to keep him away from it, while sealing him in the thing so he couldn't get up there. Then downgraded herself to a mortal status so he cannot find her. If we factor that in, if a goddess is scared of this guy, he's pretty much a god killer. If we pit him against this Four Swords adventure one. Sorry, I haven't really played it, so I'm going on what you guys told me. This guy has a lance like the size of 3 buildings. Demise has a sword that's thick, way thicker than the Master Sword, but maybe exactly the same length, maybe a little bigger. But it's the size of the Master Sword, which is barely, let's see, I'll say a 15, 16, 17, 20-inch blade.
The Master Sword that I own is a 22-inch blade.
22, so we'll put it like, maybe Demise is 25 if you count all the way up to the very tip. That's nowhere near 3 houses big. Ganondorf could literally grab the end of his Trident of Darkness and go poke, poke, poke. Not to mention this Ganondorf is the size of Godzilla. And his feet apparently do more damage than the Iron Knuckles do in the other ones. The Iron Knuckles went, I'm retiring. He can do it. This guy can teleport at will. Yes, actually, I have played Four Swords Adventure. He does this Shadow Walk thing where, while he's moving, you cannot touch him.
Yep.
And at the same, I think he can do this after his health drops to a certain amount. He could throw his trident and do this thing at the exact same time, going to a different space in the map.
Yep.
And his trident flies in that way. It's sort of like throwing the boomerang and then trying to trick the boomerang out to make it fly in another direction.
Pretty much.
He has that. Then he has the power to send people into the Dark World, which I don't... If you count that, Demise is pretty much... I could kill anything. That won't last all that long. He'll just be back in a few seconds, but it does tire him out. Fire always bad. If we do factor in the Dark World Lightning, though, which apparently is Demise's weakness we're going on, especially Dark World Lightning. It might not be as effective, but it's still lightning.
Right.
Then we're not even counting collision damage, because Zelda games tend to have collision damage all over the place. I'm trying to pet you. Demise, well, he's a god killer, so we have to factor that in. He is, like, the brutest of the brutes. I mean, I think he's even said that he'll, in the fight with Link, that, no, when you fall, everyone else falls after you. Bloodshed and all that.
Right.
He's used to it.
Yeah, he does say something along the lines of the fact that Link is, in fact, the only one who could possibly stop him. And even then, he's fairly confident that Link doesn't stand a chance. So if Link doesn't stand a chance, nobody stands a chance.
Yeah. But then again, we're affecting in a guy 3 houses big, 3 houses wide.
Right.
Godzilla-sized, with a Godzilla-sized trident, with the ability to be invincible when he wants, with a Shadow Walk thing. But he has to be moving while doing it. He can't like walk or whatever with it. He has to call it.
Yeah.
That, and his trident goes anywhere. So if you disarm him, he'll just have it back in a few seconds. Minion summoning, apparently it only affects in the Dark World, but if we put it into the real world thing, that still tires Demise out, and if any of those minions inflict damage, it's 1 point of damage less than Ganon has to inflict. I think that's it for my rant. Honestly, I think the big Ganon has it if you put all that power into it. I mean, I know Link has fought big things before, but that's because he had sort of like a Blade of Evil's Bane on his side. But if we count that out...
Right. It is interesting to note that in order to defeat this Ganon, it took 4 Links.
It took 4 times the Links, normally, which means 4 Swords Adventure is on what timeline?
Child timeline, right after Twilight Princess.
So after Twilight Princess, it took 4 times the power with just 1 trident. He's holding this trident he wasn't holding before, and he's 4 times stronger than Link, and it takes 4 times the Link to beat him.
Right.
Demise has no chance. Demise got killed by 1 Link.
Demise got killed by 1 Link, definitely.
So, I guess it's pretty much safe to say that this Ganon will wipe the floor with Demise's glowy red hair.
More than
no
likely.
question.
I mean, I guess I'm the only one here who hasn't actually played through all of 4 Swords Adventures, so I've never actually fought Ganon, but I did watch Serene stream it I did watch her play when she streamed it. And that Ganon is quite imposing. Quite imposing.
It is, and I think near the end part of it, when you're aka protecting someone and that someone's trying to do a move, he also has new attacks that he can do, which is mostly range. He doesn't really chase anyone with it. He stays fairly range with them, but he's the perfect balance between melee, magic, ranged, and just pure attack and defense.
I think comparing Demise against 4 Sword Adventures Ganon is, I think that 4 Sword Adventures Ganon basically has it. If not basically, like definitely, So
Definitely has it. I mean, God, man. He has... Demise's only advantage is if he knocks the trident out of the guy's hand to stab the guy in the heart, which is probably backed up by 3 or 4 layers of fat. That's the only chance. That and if we count him as when he's in this form, the 4 Swords Adventure Link, he's counted as a demon. If we count it like that, because he doesn't look human at all. I don't even want to classify him as human.
Yeah, he's some weird pig demon thing.
So we classify him as demon, which means now he's on par with Demise and stamina and strength and stuff like that.
At least on par, if not more so, because it does take 4 Links to defeat him, and even when you knock him down, it still takes Zelda's spell to actually take him down fully. So, even if you're not factoring that it can only be defeated by sacred attacks, he's at least got the endurance of Demise, if not more so.
And this is just because of 1 fork.
Yep.
It gives him Godzilla-like strength.
All because of the Trident of Darkness.
So, don't mess with sacred artifacts, but be them light or dark. So, seal of approval goes to 4 Swords Adventure Ganon.
Yeah. So factoring that, we've got 3 for Ganondorf, or Ganon whatever, and 2 for Demise. I think it's pretty safe to say there, then, if we factor Four Sword Adventures Ganon, I think that it's pretty safe to say that Ganondorf beats Demise. On the other hand, if viewers don't want to factor Four Sword Adventures Ganon simply because Ganon, not Ganondorf, that's fine by me. In that case, then the point total is 2-2, in which case you've got Demise and Ganondorf being about on par with each other. So,
which I guess is what Nintendo's aiming for.
Probably.
Keep him just as evil, maybe up his evil status a little bit every once a game. I mean, Ocarina of Time, the Twilight Princess, he got considerably more evil.
Right.
Of course, if you just want to roll your eyes on this whole, on this whole entire thing and just say, "Oh my God, who cares? They're just games. Let's just play the games. You freaking losers!" You can do that too.
Yep.
Go play the game. Why are you even here? Why are you listening to this?
Yep.
God, man, why?
So that pretty much ends our discussion on Demise versus Ganondorf. I'd like to make a point that in future podcasts, first of all, they're probably going to be much shorter. We've already gone almost 2 hours here as it is.
Yeah.
Future podcasts are probably going to be much shorter. There was a lot to talk about here, so
Sorry.
we still have another section to do still, so it's going to be a little bit longer.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to note is that in future podcasts, when we get them, we will be reading like fan mail or whatever, reader comments. So
if we get any.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say that. If
when
we
we
get
get
any.
some.
We just started, so we're probably not going to have a lot of fan mail to begin with.
Right.
And none of us are really all that well known, and we haven't really gotten our names out there yet. So
Right.
let's
We're
kind
not
of put that on the
superstars.
back burner a little bit before we start, getting into that.
Right. Well, I'm just leaving a note that for anybody who hears this and wants to comment, there's always a chance that your comments may in fact end up in the podcast. So please feel free to leave comments and tell us what you think. We'll probably have the next podcast recorded before we even get this one up. So you probably won't be hearing any reader comments for at least a couple of podcasts, but we will try to incorporate them in later.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and move on to our What's Going On in Gaming section.
What's going on in gaming?
Today's video gaming topic is Metal Gear Solid V or Metal Gear Solid 5, however you want to say it.
Yeah,
Same
you can
thing.
call them either. You can call them either, or I just call it V because I'm like, one of the fans who are like, well, Kojima's calling it V in the trailer, so I'm gonna call it V. But you can call it Metal Gear Solid 5 too. It's the same thing. But anyway, the thing I wanted to talk about, this is fairly recent. It happened a few days ago. The voice actor for Snake, David Hayter, was not asked to reprise his role in Metal Gear Solid 5. Now, the thing that bothers me about it is the fact that I'm probably going to butcher his name, but Akio Otsuka, the Japanese voice actor for Solid Snake, will be coming back. So that's kind of heartbreaking in a sense, in that it sort of feels like Kojima is dropping such an iconic voice actor. But on the flip side, Kojima did state that he did it in order to keep the series fresh, and it makes sense since, spoiler alert for those who haven't played Metal Gear Solid 4. Big Boss, Big Boss's voice actor, who is the Snake that's going to be featured in Metal Gear Solid 5, um, was not voiced by David Hayter, but in fact by, I want to say, Richard Doyle, uh, or somebody by that name. The name escapes me for right now, but the same voice actor who voiced the Fury. Of course, my associates here have no idea what I'm talking about since they've never really
I
played
know
Metal Gear
very,
Solid.
very little of Metal Gear Solid.
But um, my thoughts on this are that Kojima knows what he's doing. I'm not going to give up on the series just because of that. It is kind of sad that you won't be able to hear David Hayter's gruff voice in this newest installment. But David Hayter, although is bummed about it, he was a pretty good sport about it too, which is kind of nice. Um, but I'm not going to give up. I have faith that Hideo Kojima is going to make this work, and if any Metal Gear Solid fans are listening right now, I implore you to also just write it out, see what's going on. Now, here's another thing that should be of note: the fact that this news was posted right around April Fool's, which makes it seem like this is a really super elaborate April Fool's joke. And knowing Hideo Kojima, he is basically king of elaborate pranks, including altering the Metal Gear Solid 2 trailer to feature Snake in it when he's actually not, at least for the parts that the trailer showed. Basically throwing Raiden in there as a super surprise. It's like, you thought you guys were gonna use Snake, huh? Well, guess again, it's Raiden. That actually pissed a lot of people off, though. But the thing is, though, as of right now, it looks like this is completely legit, as David Hayter actually responded and gave us the full scoop, in that he just simply wasn't asked. He got in touch with somebody with the production crew who handles that stuff, and he basically just told them flat out that they won't be needing him for this one. So I know you guys haven't played Metal Gear Solid, but like, what are your thoughts on this, if you have any? How would you feel if Shigeru Miyamoto just decided to not include Charles Martinet's voice as Mario or something like that?
Well, I have comments on this, not exactly like Nintendo games, but I have played games, aka, I'll just say it, Tales of Symphonia, for one. And then you play Tales of Symphonia 2, and their voice actors just completely change. Even though I love the first voice actors and stuff like that, you get really attached to them. And when they change it, you sit there and go, why? It was so perfect before. I mean, you really fit the thing. Let's see. From what I've actually seen in Metal Gear Solid, if there's a new Snake voice, it's going to take a long time to get used to, especially when you sit there and look at. We're going at 4 games now. I don't know if you ever showed up in Metal Gear Rising. Did he? Snake show
No,
up?
he doesn't show up in Metal Gear Rising. That's a strictly Raiden game. Although he
Okay.
is mentioned, though, but not really like
Okay, so the
proficiently.
original Metal Gear Solid things where he's actually in the game and you got used to that voice. When you sit
One
there
thing you
and
should note, though, is that Solid Snake is only in two, or no, three of the four Metal Gear Solid games that are out.
okay, well, the 3. Whatever, like I said, I don't know all that much, but I'm going on, like, normal ideas, which is simply saying when you get to know him for 3 of the games, and then all of a sudden his voice changes for 1 of the games, you sit there and go, I don't know if that's the right person. I missed the voice. It happens whenever you sit there and go, oh, I can't wait to see this guy's voice again. He was such a good actor. And it's like, we go from, oh, deep to, hello.
Right. My thoughts on it, I can't really relate to Metal Gear Solid, obviously, but I can relate via Pokemon, where 4Kids, freaking hate 4Kids, but 4Kids was dubbing the original 8 seasons of Pokemon. But then Pokemon USA said, you know what, now we're going to have you stop dubbing it, and we're going to take it over, and they replaced all the voice actors in it. I kind of stopped watching the series back in Johto, so I didn't really know much about the new voice actors, but when season 9 got started, I ended up watching a couple of the earlier movies with May and Max and everything. I was like, oh, hey, cool and everything. And then I watched an episode of 9th season, or maybe, it was 9th season. It was the Battle Frontier, or whatever it was. I'm watching the season, and, the new voice actors and everything, and every time Max opened his mouth, I just wanted to freaking stab the voice actor with my horn.
Yeah, I didn't really like Max's voice at all either.
It's I was okay with Ash because whatever. I didn't really like the change of Professor Oak, but again, whatever. Kind of have a whatever personality. May's voice was alright to begin with. I didn't really care much for the change there. But I didn't really like Max at all to begin with. But I had no problems with his voice actor. I thought his voice actor was great. And as soon as I saw season 9, I said, no. And I stopped watching the series until Diamond and Pearl started. And I watched Diamond and Pearl all the way through. So I can definitely say in aspects of Dawn, I didn't have any problems with her voice. But at the same time, I think Dawn was voiced by the girl who did May in 9th season, but I don't remember. Regardless, though, I had no problems with Dawn's voice, but then I had nothing to compare it to. With Ash and May and Max, and especially Max, but with Brock as well, I really did not like their changes to any of those characters at all. And I felt upset that the English voice actors had changed when the Japanese voice actors, even today, are still the same ones. They're going on their 17th or 18th season now, and they're still the same voice actors in Japan. But in America, they changed voice actors after the 8th season to save money, quote unquote, because apparently Pokemon wasn't doing well, even though it was phenomenal. Whatever. Basically, if my aspect on changing voice actors part of the way through a series is if you've got a voice actor and they can still perform the role. If Charles Martinet died and couldn't do Mario and Wario and all the other voices he does, obviously you've got to change voice actors. That's not a problem. But if Charles Martinet is still alive, still able to perform the role perfectly fine and has no problems, I would not want them to change the voice of Mario. So, and I can actually relate, again with Daisy from the Mario series. She has had 3 different voice actors, and the first voice actor I really enjoyed. I don't remember the names of any of them, the first voice actor I really enjoyed, but the second voice actor I swear was the same voice actor who does Luigi. They could not tell the difference between them at all.
I actually looked up the voice actors for Daisy. The one that you like, the one that was in, I think it was Mario Tennis.
Mario Tennis.
Unfortunately, she met her end when she drowned during a flash flood in her basement. So
that sucks.
Yeah.
That's probably why they had to change voice actors then. Yeah. But they could have still picked somebody better that doesn't sound like Luigi. I swear, Luigi and Daisy in Mario Party 3 sound exactly the same. So
why you hating on Luigi?
It makes sense, though. It makes sense, though. They are sweethearts, aren't they?
Why you hating on Luigi?
Right. I'm not hating on Luigi. I'm hating on Daisy sounding like Luigi. I like Luigi.
Honestly, if I met a girl who sounded exactly like me and she was hot, I wouldn't mind doing it. Just saying.
Anyway, let's get back to this the thing at hand. Let's not get on sound like, hookups. Anyway.
Back to the thought of changing voice actors halfway through a series. So
now, one thing that would make sense though is that if the character has aged or has changed in some way, and the original voice actor just can't produce a voice that reflects that change, then it would make sense. Like Big Boss is considerably older in Metal Gear Solid 4 than he was in Snake Eater, so he's going to be a little more aged in that his voice is much more like his voice is much more sophisticated, and he's going to, I don't know, he's just going to be different. So I think that's what Hideo Kojima was getting at by changing his voice actor now, because Big Boss is considerably a much more different person than he was than he was in Snake Eater, which is Big Boss's first appearance. And in doing that, in changing the voice actor, you also get a sense that Big Boss really has changed since then. He doesn't sound like the same guy that he was before. He might sound, according to the events of Peace Walker, he might sound a little more angry or a little more tired of things. And, having David Hayter come back and try to produce that when a new voice could just come in and try to produce it will give considerably different results.
Right. So yeah, I can see why they would have to change voice actors, but it also depends on the reason. Like I said, if there's no reason for the change, then I wouldn't change the voice actor. But if you do have a reason for changing the voice, then obviously change the voice however you need.
I just shoot the person.
Yeah. I don't agree with the change in the voices of Pokemon at all, so that's for sure. So that's unless somebody else has to say something on it, I think that wraps up the voice acting changing section, the video game today.
The gamer today.
We went from gaming today to hating on people's voice acting.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, but it was all in the same realm. I did pose the question, what would you guys think about it? If somebody did that on your favorite series and stuff,
Right.
So
definitely. So it was still on the video gaming today aspect. So I think that is it for video gaming today. That is all 3 sections that we have planned for this podcast, and we are currently over 2 hours here, so we should probably wind this podcast down. Well, I think that's I think that about covers what we have to say in this week's podcast.
Yep.
I'm Tiger Skunk.
I'm John Sword 16.
I'm Serene Inc. And we are the D-Pad Podcast, and we are signing off.
Also remember to treat your D-pads really well, because you never know when they might come in handy.
If you have enjoyed our podcast, please feel free to subscribe to it. I believe this will be up on YouTube, and once the editing is done, I'm going to put it up on my Twitch. We will have links to everybody's YouTubes in the bottom of the description, as well as a download for this week's podcast. So,
if you feel like sitting here for 2 hours.
Also, if you have a desire to, please feel free to leave your comments behind on the podcast, and you may see them featured in a future episode. Not going to say next week's, but a future episode of the podcast. A quick preview of what we're planning for next week. Next week's subject is Gygus from Earthbound. Or more specifically, the Mother series, as it will be Gygus and Gyg. So that will be our main topic.
But we won't be touching up on Mother 3 so much, since somebody here hasn't finished it yet.
Plus, Gygus isn't in Mother 3 anyway. We're just talking about Gygus.
However, there are some unused sprites and battle animations that may have implied that he would have been planned to be in Mother 3.
Right.
But we won't. I'll try not to get into that because I really don't want to spoil it for her, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody else who hasn't played Mother 3 yet. So yeah. But
regardless, again, that's the next podcast. So
I'm getting drunk all the time.
Also, if you're feeling curious, you should check out our Twitch stream, our individual channels. I am at twitch.tv/TigerSkunk. You can check out Serene Inc. at twitch.tv/Serene Inc. That's SURREEN. Is it 2 R's or 1 R?
SUREENINK. I'll probably put them up on the screen at this point.
There you go. And check out John Swords as well. It's John Sword 16, Twitch TV / John Sword 16.
Yep.
Simple. You can't forget it.
This has been the D-Pad Podcast, and we are signing off. We'll see everyone next podcast.
See you later, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bring money.